Well, I'm super excited to be here today and talk to you guys about a little piece of what Liz touched on, which is segmentation. So, teaching you how to send less and actually make more with your email list. So, my goal isn't necessarily to teach you how to build those on the platform you use, but help you learn how to think strategically and learn how to pick and pair the right segments for your campaign so that you're generating more revenue while sending less. So I won't go too much into my bio since we only have about 20 minutes together, but I am the director of email and SMS at Bad Marketing. I've been with Bad Marketing just over 3 years and run a team here of 16 marketers. So keeps us busy. We have close to about 35 or 40 brands between all of us. So lots of diversity, and I'm excited to share some of the data and tricks with you here in these next slides. So biggest thing I want to touch on today is the problem. So the number one thing I see when I'm auditing brands that come in is a lot of people are doing the same thing, sounding the same way, and not really adapting to what their list needs specifically. So as you know, deliverability standards are increasing. Inboxes are fuller than ever. Communication preferences are also changing. And all of those things are kind of playing into a strategy that is continuing to not keep up. So the strategy is a bit outdated and a little bit impersonal. So my goal here today is to give you the solutions to be able to turn your email list into a revenue generating powerhouse and help you get to the top of those inboxes, help you be seen, and help you communicate with customers in the way that they actually enjoy engaging with. So your opportunity here is segmentation and personalizing through that. So segmentation, in order to do this well, you really have to be able to get inside the minds of your consumers, kind of setting what you think you know aside and using data to really drive your decisions, not getting caught up when it's your brand and you're the owner. It's really easy to want to protect the baby that you've built, but you really have to allow yourself to set that aside and use data to drive your decisions, because in the end, you're selling to the customer, not yourself. So the best way to sell to that customer is going to use that data to personalize and build segments that actually show the person on your list that you're thinking of them and the messages that they're receiving are relevant, which is going to allow you to build a lot of long-term trust and ultimately put more money in your pocket. Failure to do so is going to harm your deliverability, letting your competitors be more seen and them taking that revenue from you. So just some really key points here in the next couple of slides that I want to touch on to help you personalize and put a little more of that money in your own pockets. Before we get into some of the key segments I'm going to cover for today, just want to cover segmentation as a whole. So it is just targeting people with specific messages that allow you to generate more with less. So couple questions that you do want to ask yourself when you're thinking about how to segment your email. And these are going to be important questions to think of as we dive into these 4 core segments. You really want to make sure that at first you ask yourself what the goal of your campaign is. So understanding this overarching goal and audience is super important, or you're just sending pointlessly, to be transparent. So not only the goal in regards to who you're targeting, buyers or non-buyers, but also your goal as the marketer. So we always want our emails to generate revenue, but sometimes there's a different purpose behind an email. Maybe some of your metrics are low and you need to boost open rates or click rates for deliverability purposes. So you also need to understand that additional goal so that you can tailor that email very specifically to help you do those things. When you know the goal, you then want to sit down and ask yourself who is going to benefit from this. So I have shared some considerations. There's a lot of text on my slides. As you can tell, I'm not going to read directly from them, but my hopes is that if you get these slides after, you have some really good notes and takeaways to be able to use. So really thinking and getting in the mind, again, of your consumer, who is going to benefit, right? If I'm sending out a newsletter, my goal here is to build trust, solidify myself as the expert in my niche. So that way, when a customer is ready to buy, they come to me, or if they're already a buyer, they stay with me. But I need to think of who this is going to benefit. It's not always going to benefit my entire list. If I'm specifically using my newsletter to soft sell to one of my products, and somebody has already bought that product multiple times, this email probably doesn't make sense for them. So I'm not going to crowd their inbox further. If I have people who only open emails during sales, I'm not going to continue to always send them newsletters if I send them weekly because I'm just harming those engagement metrics. Doesn't mean I won't try to re-engage them occasionally, but I'm not going to sit there and just assume that it will benefit them someday, somehow. So super important you think about things like that. If you've collected data in your welcome flow or through engagement campaigns and you have profile tags and someone has specifically said that they don't care about the topic your newsletter covers, you also probably don't want to target them with that information. So you really have to dig deep and be able to understand what the purpose is and who would and would not benefit if it's going to rub them the wrong way or not. Exclusions matter just as much as those inclusions. So just to keep in mind as you're determining who to send to, this is also super important because if you exclude a segment too much, you're going to miss out on revenue. And if you don't exclude it enough, you're going to harm your deliverability. So you really, again, need to understand your data to determine how to pair inclusions and exclusions properly. I've given you some ideas here. Again, you're going to have to really know your brand and your data and be able to take what I share here and tailor it to that because not every brand is the same. But one really good example here that I will share is we did have a new brand come on. And we here at BAD, because I'm a little bit crazy, we have an 80-page segmentation SOP for all different scenarios that our team follows. And so when we gain a new brand, there's a specific strategy that tends to work for most that we always start with. But we realized for this brand specifically that the percentage of revenue coming from email using this strategy wasn't growing at the same rate as it typically does. So when we dug into the data, we actually found that while most brands, we want to exclude recent buyers because they're in a post-purchase flow or they just purchased a product. For this brand, we actually didn't want to do that because we were able to see that people placed their second order within 7 days of placing their first order. So that data allowed us to stop excluding buyers so much. And as soon as we did that, we also saw improvement in engagement metrics and in revenue. So again, that's why you have to understand your brand and understand who to include and exclude and how frequently, because it really does matter. Same thing with this brand. Typically, subscriptions are for some brands kind of set it and forget it. We kind of want to exclude them based on cancellation rates. But for this brand, we actually learned that second products added to subscriptions went up more quickly, again, because of that buying timeline. So it didn't make sense to exclude them as much. However, based on segmentation, it also doesn't mean that we just included all subscribers. We made segments for all subscribers, subscribers engaged, subscribers not engaged, subscribers with a renewal date in 7 days, and things like that. So again, you have to really be able to understand your exclusions and get granular with those segments as well to make those decisions. So inclusions and exclusions in the right amount really matter. What I'm going to talk about here next is the Goldilocks zone, and this is going to break down the 4 segments that I want to talk to you about briefly. That Goldilocks zone is kind of the perfect spot of these top 4 segments. Most of the time, your sends are going to include a little bit of everything. It's rare that they don't, and this is where those inclusions and exclusions are super important. So we're going to talk about the things that make up that Goldilocks zone, which is your engaged segments, non-buying segments, buying segments, and those historic segments, so you can find that perfect mix. It's going to require you to slow down and sit and really think this through, but it is important. Now, I promised last slide before I get into these segments, I just want to give you a quick disclaimer here is just to remember as you start to implement things and take away from this presentation, reminding you that segments are not always the same. So it is not set it and forget it. It can depend on seasons. Maybe your brand targets a lot of moms. They're going to engage differently in summer versus spring, kids in school, kids not in school. Maybe you just came out of a really big sale and people stocked up on product. How you segment the next few months in your strategy is going to be much different than if you hadn't done that. So you have to remember that segmentation, generally the concept makes the same, but you have to always be growing in that area. Your segmentation is going to vary based on your list, your current deliverability, if you're in warm-up periods, and segmentation is always going to be supported by a very strategic campaign calendar. So after this, make sure you really go through and audit your current segments and fill in the gaps and make sure you're making those database decisions. All right, so our first one here, that's engaged segments. Some key mistakes I see here, a lot of people treat engaged segments the same, or they don't take it far enough. So engaged with email is different than engaged on site. And so you have to really make sure that you understand both. And you also have to understand where those people in your list are coming from, because you're going to speak to those engaged buyers differently. Whether they came through the pop-up or an embedded form on your website, or if they came from signing up at checkout, all of that is going to be different in how they engage. So it's extremely important for your deliverability, especially if you use a platform like OpenSend or Retention to pull profiles, that you're being really strategic here. So for engaged segments, they're always going to be the core of segmentation. Most of your campaigns are including an engaged segment in some way, somehow. And this is going to keep most of the time your revenue high, as well as those deliverability metrics. I've included some reflective questions here you can use to ask yourself just some things that my brain thinks of when I'm going through the process, so that you have those notes. But super important here with engaged, again, to remember not just to remain surface level. When we think of engaged, our typical is going to be based on if they've joined our list within the last 30 days and how often they've opened or clicked. We're going to do the same for on-site activity, but it breaks down further from both of those. So a buyer engaged with email, a buyer engaged on site, a non-buyer engaged with email, a non-buyer engaged on site, engaged subscribers, engaged cancel subscribers so that you know when to retarget them, engaged new profiles, people who have been on the list and are super engaged, but they still haven't purchased. They've engaged in the last 20 days, but or they've engaged in the last 90 days, but not the last 20. They've engaged with product 1, but not product 2, or types of emails, or during sales, or all of this matters. So you really have to take this and go much more granular as well based on your brand, and make sure that those timeframes accommodate as well. So common ones are 30, 45, 60, 90, 120 day. And you can also go 200 or 365. Versus super cold leads, depending on your price point and your product, might be a shorter time frame. So 5 days, 7 day, 14 day. And again, all of this is going to be for inclusions and exclusions and how you use those. Second one that we typically target the most are non-buyer segments. Targeting is very similar to engaged, but you may want to split up how you talk to non-buyers compared to other people who have purchased or are new to the list, especially for sales or launches, and how you kind of cross-sell or upsell to them. Non-buyers, super important to send them engagement campaigns that allow you to gain more information and data for profile tags and further segment. So if they're not buying, you can understand why and target them more with the products that they want to see. And again, breaking it down similar to engaged into all those different categories that you can as well. Other ones that maybe didn't mention for the buyers, a really great idea for non-buyers is to use resends of your email campaigns. So for sales, for example, when we send a sale launch email in the morning, later that evening, we will resend to people who opened or clicked the email but did not purchase. So that non-buying portion. And sometimes our resends outperform or do similar revenue to the original email. For campaigns that we just need to send because we need to get one popular sent out, same thing, probably to non-buyers, but we may not include buyers who originally engaged with the email. So again, you need to be able to sit and think and keep in mind that buyer psychology and what's going to relate to those people in this segment. Your buyer segments, this is a really big one because you need to be careful on how you're reaching out to these people based on their purchasing level, the number of times they've purchased, if it was a single purchase or a subscription order. You really need to understand this because their post-purchase journey is going to kind of interact with your next steps. So a lack of proper segmentation here will absolutely kill the relationship. So it's very important a lot of times, just as a safety precaution, when we are sending specifically to non-buyers and there's a segment built around that, I'll still exclude buyers just to be safe so that no one kind of slips through the cracks. So really important to understand the data behind how your buyers engage and if your product makes sense for upselling or cross-selling or gifting or any of those things. Super, super important. Another reason you really want to break this down, similar to engaged, buyers all time, buyers last 30, 60, 90, 2 times, 3 times, all of that, is because you can really pair those together as well. So for example, if I'm sending an email and I want to include buyers all time, but my deliverability isn't like on the rise and I need to keep that in mind, I might then exclude people who bought only one time but over a year ago and never have bought again. And they've still received at least 5 emails since that purchase. So I know I've engaged with them at some point, but they're unengaged. I might exclude them. So again, you really have to sit and think and get granular with that goal, and keeping deliverability in mind too. Last one is historic segments. The more data you have here, the better. This is really what helps you stand out as a brand. So as I said, those engagement flows that allow you to really dive in and collect more data and draw patterns and get even more granular to tailor copy and content. Really cold leads might engage better with a picture of product 1 in your hero and buyers with product 2. So you have to use that history and understand AOV, LTV, what if someone's on a subscription, do they typically tend to cancel around month 4 during a certain season? You have to understand that history so that you can go ahead and segment further based on discount code, predicted analytics, and all of those things. And that's going to help you speak to those customers in an even more personal way. Couple examples here of how we've done this with segmentation. So as you can kind of see here for this brand, some of these numbers before bad, they were basically sending to the same groups over and over. And it took about 7 campaigns to generate about 27K. When we came in and we changed that segmentation, you can kind of see these are only inclusions, by the way. You can't see exclusions in this screenshot. You can see we have a lot more variety here. And in doing so, we've seen some improvements in those click rates, as well as open rates. And it only took 2 campaigns to reach that same goal. So again, that segmentation, we sent less in 2 campaigns and actually made more. So it really does make a huge difference in what you generate for the brand. Same thing here with a sale. We generated about 10K more in a 24-hour flash sale and actually 3x revenue on a launch by doing the same thing with segmentation. So again, being really strategic and including and excluding in the right amounts. Last piece here on this brand, just also showing over time the power of what segmentation has done here for deliverability, increasing it by about 16 points here, seeing those key metrics also improve on the way up 27 to about 84%. And then that email attributed revenue also increasing over 300%. So segmentation makes a difference. It's time consuming up front, but as you can see, it really is worth it. Just a visual for you guys here and kind of how we think of things. So as you can see, how much overlap there is between segments. Again, with who we're including and who we're speaking to, and getting really specific with when we're including and excluding people. But for the most part, there's always overlap of 2 to 3 segments, and that's really what's driving those email campaigns. Just some additional results here of examples from us targeting in certain connections as well, from engaged paired with historic, engaged paired with winbacks and non-buyers and new profiles paired together. Again, just thinking where you can get the most out of each send and how you can do that is going to really help you increase that revenue over time. Another example here for sales strategy, again, kind of included this slide as a bonus for you guys. I want to make sure that I honor everyone's time here, but for sales strategies, again, really thinking of those segments that we just talked about, but making sure that you're getting even more granular with the type of offer and who it really makes sense for. So if I'm offering 20% off and my monthly subscribers get 20% off with every order, I probably don't want to target them with that sale. It doesn't make sense. Most likely I'm going to increase cancellations because they're going to stock up on that sale instead of having to pay the amount that they're currently paying. So it's a little bit conflicting. But maybe if I'm offering a free product and it would be something that somebody could gift, I do want to target them. I also need to think of buyers versus non-buyers. What kind of emotion do I need to elicit that's different for both, and how will I segment against that? How long is my sale? If my sale is a month long and I'm excluding people who bought in the last 24 or 48 hours, which is typically something we do for shorter sales, for those reminder emails, If it's a month long and I exclude them from every reminder email, my buyers are going to become unengaged and that's going to harm my deliverability. So I then need to know, how do I target buyers with value content in between those sales? So just some really key tips here on making sure you understand the perspective, who, again, repeating myself, including, excluding, and the time frames really make a big difference with those segments so that everyone's remaining engaged and your revenue is increasing through multiple segments and you're not just spamming your entire list. Also just included a example here. This is someone who has a month-long sale that actually does better for them than Black Friday. And we had to be really strategic here with how we target people. It is a jewelry brand, so there are the ability to make multiple purchases. But in those reminder emails, we exclude buyers in a couple, and then we include them again. Exclude them in a couple, include them again. We target buyers with different copy about gifting. It's baby shower season. It's Mother's Day. All of these things, making sure. Our hype emails are very educational. Our reminder emails in between are educational with just a reminder at the top. And so just making sure that you are not annoying any of the segments you're sending to who have already engaged, but still capitalizing on purchases that have yet to be made. Lastly here, just a bonus tips slide for you guys. Just a couple of reminders here for segmentation. Making sure to understand that if it's not working, stop sending the same content over and over. A lot of times, if your emails have low conversions and high engagement, you need to check that on-site experience. If your conversions are low and your engagement is low, you're not resonating and you need to pivot, or your customers are going to profit, or your competitors are going to profit instead of you. Make sure that you deepen segmentation in a smart way. It doesn't mean creating a new email for everyone, but using a very broad email for a general segment, cloning it, tweaking copy or graphics a little bit to target buyers, non-buyers, vice versa. So be really smart with how you do your versions to be able to capitalize in an easy way. Also use resends, like I mentioned before. It is a huge revenue generator for us with that segmentation. Avoid sending to less popular segments back to back. So if you have an unengaged group you're trying to re-engage, kind of sandwich it between some engaged segments to make sure that you're not harming deliverability along the way. Make sure your strategy supports good segmentation. So kind of the rule of give, ask. So soft sell, hard push in mind, and you're educating, engaging, and entertaining. Understand your segments, know and run reports to understand if people aren't engaged because they haven't been sent to or because they truly are unengaged before you do that list cleaning, which I hope you all are doing regularly. If not, quarterly is a very good way to start. And then just some additional categories. Again, these are the top 4 that kind of create that perfect scenario of a zone, but really making sure that you're also considering other things for your brand: reward members, wish lists, subscribers, VIPs, A/B tests, cold leads, profile properties, all of these things. So a little bit of a quick overview of segmentation. I could talk for hours about it, but hopefully this was really helpful and gave you some ideas of just how to sit down and think strategically for those customers so that you can start targeting them with that information that they do want, and you can reap the benefits and start growing those conversions as well. So that is all I've got for you.
So Kelsey, let's turn AI onto segmentation. So how are you using, or what are the opportunities for us to use AI for segmentation? Are there, or is it just like I need a good analyst, or how, what's the future there?
Yeah, so I think AI is always a really good support tools. I also saw someone's question, like, how do we create marketing calendars? So a lot of times AI will use to generate ideas, which will then like trigger the thought process of how we want to segment or bring up like new ideas. Some email platforms also have where you can ask AI to make you a segment too. Those just always you want to triple check, because again, sometimes it will choose a parameter that maybe doesn't really make sense. Mm-hmm. So you can definitely use it more so in that way. But the biggest tool, honestly, I was just emailing one day and somehow my brain knew how to answer the segmentation questions. I don't know how, it just happened. So it's really hard to explain, but I also just think it takes, it's like a muscle. It's just practice over and over and like really knowing your list. So it becomes second nature, and it's much easier for you to get in the mind frame to then again, tell AI what you need so it can give you suggestions, or you can just like spit out the ideas and have it like tie the pieces together. So I think practice on your end and using AI to support it, or maybe like give you an alternative perspective on what it would think. But just getting really good yourself is also very important.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's my day job is to do some of this for Maripost too, right? So I like think about how what we're sending is going to impact our customer and our customers. And I do have to set aside, like segment my calendar a little bit to say,
Mhm.
let me think about our list. Who do we have? Who are we sending to? How do we build it? How do we clean it? How do we segment it? Like, again, back to the basics, you got to make the time to understand what's in there so that when you ask AI, it's a meaningful ask, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The more time you spend knowing, a lot of people skip over it because it's really time consuming in the beginning. But if you took just a week to like get, just be the absolute expert on every single detail in your team, like repetitive, read it again and read it again and read it again, it just does you wonders after the fact to be able to segment and dive deeper and use tools like AI. So
Kelsey, how about you? You're coming with a lot of data and a lot of charts, is my guess. When you're working with people in segmentation, how do they interpret? How do they deal with what you're telling them?
I think people just don't understand the really easy things that they're missing just because there's so many other things going on. So there's so much easy low hanging fruit that most of my audits aren't super in depth because there's just really key easy pieces. Most accounts, they just have two engaged segments or they send to the full list over and over. So for me as an audit, like there's clearly easy fixes for me and it's going to be very easy for me to show the value within 1 to 2 email sends because it's already not happening. Even tools we have like resends for emails, just a lot of people don't think about it, but I can clone your launch email, change the subject line so it doesn't stack and resend it. And again, we've had the first send generate for some brands like 50K and the second one generate 40K with just a simple subject line change. So there's just little things because someone's running so many parts of the business they miss. And so just being able to bring a few of those ideas to light is a very quick turnaround. So usually received very well, but I'm a more direct approach.
My one last question is somewhat of a softball, but I do think it's important for people who are still on. Like, what's your one piece of advice for the people who are listening? You had lots of slides, lots of information. I got 4 pages of notes. Like, what's the thing?
I think in email we have a unique opportunity. So I'm just the email mess department. I do not envy the paid media department. I don't want any part of it. I don't want to deal with those budgets. So we're good there. So I think sometimes we get really nervous and afraid to try things. And I would just encourage you not to be afraid to try split testing, but also just trying new things with segmentation. If you try segmentation, you make an email, you send it, and it's too segmented and it doesn't work, you didn't just spend $10,000 on ads. You're going to clone that email, you're going to change the subject line, and you're just going to send it to a broader engaged audience to make up the revenue. But you're just paying for the monthly platform. Typically, you're not paying per send. There's more wiggle room to try things. If it fails, you just resend it to a broader audience and make it up. So I would say just testing more and also just setting aside, again, similar to Liz's point, what you think you know. Again, as a brand owner, it's really hard. Sometimes I have to use my direct voice and say, hey, I know you love your brand guidelines. It doesn't matter in email and it's not going to make you money.
Yeah.
And you have to do what the customer wants. So I think just that customer focused approach and really understanding it, setting aside that, and then setting aside the I don't know what I'm doing, fear of trying things, combine those together makes a really big difference. But we have that unique ability to test and not be as harshly affected as some other platforms. So there's no reason not to.